Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'm sorry for the late start. I just wanted to let you all know that Senator Risa Hontiveros will be joining us a little later. She had something she had to attend to, but she's prepared something for us by way of a greeting, which I'll play in a minute. So I'd like to welcome you all for joining us today on this very important topic. For all of you who are joining us, if this is your first time, I'd like to welcome you all today. This is Bambina Olivares, the Director of Programming for Manila House, and welcoming you to this webinar. Women on Top, Why We Need More Women in Leadership. If this is your first time to join us online, let me just tell you a little bit more about Manila House. We are a private members club that opened in February 2017 with the aim of bringing together an assemblage of people from the business, creative, cultural, and intellectual committees who are drawn to each other by a shared interest to continuously learn about art, culture, food, business, and politics, and from the diversity of their fellow members themselves. It is a community of curious, committed, and caring individuals, and it lives on beyond the physical confines of the club. We began our webinar series in May 2020, covering and encouraging discussion about a range of topical issues, from business and investment to health and wellness and art and culture. We have featured both local and international speakers and continue to broaden our reach among members and non-members alike. Our previous webinars are available for viewing on the Manila House YouTube channel. That said, for non-members among us, you might like to consider membership to Manila House. We have a limited number of memberships still available. Please email membership@manilahouseinc.com for more information. And please be informed that this, in compliance with current regulations, Manila House is open for dine-in to fully vaccinated members and their guests according to the allowed capacities, and our takeaway service is open to the public. So please call us on 0917-816-3685 to place your orders. Before we begin, just a few ground rules. This event is being recorded and will be up on the Manila House YouTube channel in a day or two. Please use the chat box and the Q&A box for any questions and comments, and we'll get to your questions as we go along. And also to let you know, this is being live streamed as well on Facebook Live. So with that said, let me just bring up a slide here. Just a minute. That said, just about our topic for today, women make up 50% of the population of the Philippines, and yet only some 21% of our elected officials are women. And why is that? Are women just as, if not more, capable than men of assuming leadership roles, especially elected positions in government? We have with us today three noted speakers. We have, let me pull up a slide again, sorry for that. We have Senator Risa Hontiveros, who is a chairperson and on the Senate Committee on Women, Children, Family Relations, and Gender Equality. Senator Hontiveros is known for her tireless work in promoting public health, women's rights, and the welfare of the Filipino family. She is a multi-awarded public servant, community organizer, and journalist elected to the Senate in 2016. In her first term, she successfully championed landmark laws, including the historic expanded maternity leave law that gives working moms 105 days of paid maternity leave, and the Philippine mental health law, the country's first ever national policy to care for Filipinos' mental health. As a longtime health advocate, she pushed for the passage of the Universal Health Care Law and expanded anti-hospital deposit law to ensure the Filipino family's well-being before profit and to make health more accessible to all. Even before becoming a legislator in 2005, she was one of 27 Filipinas who earned a nomination to the prestigious Nobel Peace Prize for her work in the peace movement. Also joining us here today are Solita Monsod, an economist, educator, and political analyst. Solito Collas Monsod, Professor Emeritus of Economics at the University of the Philippines School of Economics, is a prominent educator, economist, broadcaster, writer, political analyst, popularly known as Maring Winnie. Professor Monsod has been teaching at the UPSE since 1963. Her commitment to teaching and public service have earned for her the Most Outstanding Alumna Award for 2005, given by the UP Alumni Association. She served as the Director General of the National Economic and Development Authority, or NEDA, and was Secretary of Socioeconomic Planning under President Corazon Aquino from 1986 to 1989. And last but not least, Delia Albert is a former Secretary of Foreign Affairs. She was a Philippine ambassador to Australia, non-resident ambassador Vanuatu, Nauru, and Tuvalu from October 1994 to January 2002. In 2003, she became the first female secretary of the Foreign Affairs of the Philippines, following a 36-year career in diplomacy. She was also the first woman career diplomat to become a foreign minister in ASEAN and the rest of Asia. She began her career in the Department of Foreign Affairs in 1967. She served in various capacities at the department, including as Director General of the ASEAN National Secretariat of the Philippines and Secretary General of the Conference Secretariat of the 4th APEC Economic Leaders Meeting in 1996, and as Undersecretary for the International Economic Relations and Philippine Senior Official for the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation. Her overseas assignments include Switzerland, Romania, and the former German Democratic Republic. Following her term as Secretary of Foreign Affairs, she served as Philippine Ambassador to the Federal Republic of Germany. So with that, we can start. I'd also like to make mention of that today's webinar is being presented to you in partnership with Asia Society Philippines, and we also have Joy Alampay, Executive Director of Asia Society Philippines, with us today. We are, as mentioned earlier, Senator Risa Hontiveros has a previous appointment, and she's recorded something as by way of greeting, and she'll be joining us later for the Q&A period. So I'd like to play her greeting right now.
Magandang araw po sa inyong lahat. Thank you, Manila House, for inviting me. It's an honor to be speaking alongside women I respect and admire. Maring Winnie Monsod, I know many of you might have already had numerous conversations about why we need more women in leadership. But it does bear reminding that when women do have a seat at the table, we are also able to influence and shape policies, strategies, and systems that are intimately informed by the unique and distinct experiences of being women. I, for one, have used my own experience to craft laws that aim to help more Filipinos. As some of you may know, I'm also a solo parent. My late husband, Frank, suddenly passed away over 15 years ago due to a severe asthma attack, leaving me to raise 4 children, with our youngest being only 3 years old at that time. Fast forward to being a senator, I knew being a solo mom was an incredibly hard task that many women face, especially since 95% of the 15 million solo parents are in fact women. Considering this, along with the help of solo parent organizations, we pushed for the expanded Solo Parents Welfare Act, which I'm happy to report has now been passed in the Senate. In 2019, another law I authored, the Expanded Maternity Leave Law, was also passed into law, a landmark legislation, a happy law, as we like to call it, that many working women have benefited from since. As a mother working outside the home, I know how difficult it is to be a new mom. In fact, I had just had a baby, our youngest, when I agreed to stand as a nominee of Akbayan Party in the House of Representatives. We moms understand how challenging it is to be caring for a newborn, having sleepless nights, and sometimes just feeling lost and unlike ourselves. New moms know this. Moms working outside the home know this. Even our husbands, partners, dads know how incredibly much harder a pregnancy is for women. And so naturally, women's rights advocates, women's groups, and working women from labor organizations worked closely and fought hard with me, with my office, to finally extend the paid maternity leave days for our new moms. Before 2019, Filipino mothers were only allowed 60 days maternity leave, the shortest maternity leave in the ASEAN region. Because of this new law that extends maternity leave to 105 days, not only is the Philippines at par with international standards, but also we are ensuring that Filipino moms have enough time to rest after pregnancy and childbirth. As a senator, as a politician, knowing that we need the perspective of more women in our government, I actually filed Senate Bill 817, which is an act that seeks to promote women participation and equitable representation in and by political parties. At the moment, women only hold about one-fifth of government elected positions. In fact, in the Senate, despite our over 100-year history, we've had only 22 senators, and no woman has ever served as Senate President. The bill will ensure that women's interests and needs will be included in decision-making processes in all levels of government. As chairperson of the Senate Committee on Women, I do ensure that every line in the bills we write, every provision in the laws we pass reflects the experiences of every woman. And my hope is that my different experiences as a woman, solo mom, new mom, senator, politician, have contributed not only to my being a leader or to the fullness of my humanity, but also and more so to the lives of women around me. Thank you everyone for gathering today, for constantly having these conversations about how else we can empower our women. They are always needed. Salamat muli, and I hope you all stay safe and healthy.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Senator Risa, for that. As mentioned, Senator Risa will be joining us in a while. I'd like to call on Winnie Monsod right now. She is actually engaged in, very heavily involved in getting more women elected to elected positions in this, particularly in this election cycle. Winnie, would you like to tell us more about Let Women Lead and your own experiences in leadership?
Well, you know, Bambina, you have not enabled my video.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Why is that?
I've been trying to get on, and it
I'm
says,
so sorry. We are so full of technical glitches today. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen.
because the host stopped it.
Yeah,
Ah,
it's the same with
okay.
me. I don't see any
Really?
myself.
Okay, I'm sorry, guys. You're stuck with me, but let me fix that.
No.
RC.
Why don't you start with Delia?
I don't see myself either.
Oh, you see,
Hang on.
yeah, you're also enabled.
Disabled.
Start your video because the host has stopped it.
Yeah, that's right.
Really? Okay, okay. Sorry, guys. Oh my gosh, this is just one of those days where technology is getting the better of us. Let me just check on that. Hang on a second. Can I call an RC? RC is our in-house technical.
Trying to do the video setting.
Yeah, sorry. You have to allow them on video, please. Gosh, thank you to our audience for bearing with us today. This has been really one of those days. Let's blame it on Omicron. Okay, so you should all be, okay, none of your videos are on.
Because you have stopped it, sweetheart.
There you go. Okay. Now the floor is all yours, Winnie.
I'm sorry I don't have a background. The truth is I'm in quarantine right now. So I am not in my room and I'm not in my desktop.
Are you fine? No
Yeah,
symptoms?
well, our family comprises 4 households and all 4 households have a COVID positive in them. So,
Unfortunately,
that's because we had a family every week we used to eat together, and that's it. When one gets sick, everybody else gets sick. Well, anyway, why are women at the top important? Can I start now?
Yes, of course. Please do.
Let me just, okay. Why are women at the top important? There are really several reasons for that. The first has to do with equity or fairness, because if you have, if your population is composed of at least half women, it is not fair that only 20 to 24% of public positions are occupied by them. That's the equity or equality of opportunity. That's a social justice consideration. Then there's a second consideration. Well, when you have a critical mass, without a critical mass of women in public administration, the government is really not tapping into the full potential of the country's capacity, workforce, or creativity. In other words, there's an efficiency problem. There are, you have a great mass of underutilized resources who can contribute to the growth, to the development of the economy. And thirdly, you have the fact that, well, if you're in public service, public administration affects the lives of millions of people. Half of them, or if not more, are women. So therefore, there should be women helping women. There's also another reason that women should be, in leadership positions in the government. And that is, given the current political, social environment where there is a steady move towards authoritarianism, I think we need women on top, because women, I'm not saying that they're better or worse than men, but women are different. They have different, they're more compassionate. They are certainly not authoritarian in nature. And so if we want to stave off that authoritarianism, I think we better elect a woman. So that is it. And having said that, and having convinced, all the studies, there are so many studies, the National Democratic Institute, the women in public service project of the Herbert Hoover, I think that's the Herbert Hoover Institute. There are so many studies which show that women in policy making and decision making, the more women there are, the more effective and responsive are the government agencies. And we know that, and also we know that more women engaging in the peace process leads to the sustainability of peace agreements. Why is that? And of course, the latest addition to those studies is the study made by these two econometricians in Britain who saw what happened to the pandemic and how countries fared with under women leadership and under male leadership. It is a fantastic study to two women econometricians. Of course, the journalists saw that there was this, they knew that Germany and New Zealand, Taiwan were all doing much better than male-led countries. But it took these two ladies to show, using econometric methods, to show that without a doubt that the women-led countries performed much better than the male-led countries. This was a natural experiment, the male-led countries when it came to management of the pandemic. With all that in mind, I then looked at what was it that prevented women from joining the ranks of public leaders. And there were two main hindrances. One were men, and the other was money. I'm not going to talk about men, I just talk about the money. The fact is, women don't have the money and don't have the whatever it is, the networks to bring them the money. So it was time then, we said, to try to get the women to get the public together and to see whether there was indeed a strong urge to elect women to leadership positions. And this crowdfunding would serve two purposes. One, they would give the women the much needed financial help. And so this, at the same time, these women would not have to answer to the dynasts or taipans or business corporations. Their obligation would be to the people who help them. And the technology of today makes that very, very easy through the so-called crowdfunding. And we started it in September or October, and it started greatly, but after 2 months, it started to peter off. And we're trying to figure out why that is. Well, one reason is that there are many, many other funding requirements. There are many other movements. And the second is maybe we ourselves don't know how to sell it to the public. So that's where we are now. But certainly what we have raised for women in leadership positions has been already distributed to the candidates which the group that is managing the fund have chosen. So that's where we are now. That's it.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Winnie. And now we're gonna hear from. We'll have a chance to talk about this more later, no, in the Q&A session. And now I'd like to turn you over to Delia Albert, who may not have been elected to any position, but she is also, I guess you can say, having a woman lead the Foreign Service and all that is, or the Department of Foreign Affairs, is also a way of showing how elections have consequences. So when you also elect the right leaders who are forward thinking and who realize the power and the advantages that women bring and the strengths that women bring to government, they are also in a position to appoint highly qualified and experienced women to key government positions, as we can see with Ambassador Albert. Ambassador Albert, I'm gonna try to turn on can you turn on your video? There you go. Winnie, I'll hide you first and then go back to you.
Sure.
Okay.
I'm not in quarantine, but I'm in a hotel room. I already spent 14 days in a quarantine when I came to Singapore.
Oh my
But
God.
anyway,
Are you in Singapore right now? Are you still in
I'm in
Singapore?
Singapore. I've been
Oh,
here
okay.
for a year now, yes. Anyway, taking from your comment on my introduction, I was appointed by a woman president, by the way. So perhaps that confirms what you said earlier. Thank you, Winnie and Risa, for addressing the topic. Both outstanding women leaders in the Philippines. I think the topic, you have related it very well to the Philippine national experience. By the way, Winnie, hello from Lila.
Hi.
I spent a week with her last month.
Goodness gracious. Fantastic.
And we talked about you.
Ages.
Yeah. Anyway, we of course, when we get together, we speak about friends, common friends. I thought that my role today is to bring some anecdotal examples of how other countries outside and within and outside our immediate geography have led their countries. And first of all, I'd like to thank the Asia Society, of course, and for Manila House again for inviting me to participate in your initiatives to address contemporary gender issues. I would like to also wish you all a better and a kinder new year. I'm sitting in a comfortably in safe Singapore, so I thought I'd like to share a bit of good wishes. And today I would like to talk about and share two immediate experiences I had in 2021, which I hope can contribute to the discussions today. As you are aware, Bambina, I have been staying in Singapore for the past year as a grandmother babysitting for her two grandchildren after I lost my husband last 2020. Coincidentally, Singapore declared 2021 as the year of celebrating Singapore's women. The whole year from the time I arrived to today to December 31 was like Women's Day. It was a huge celebration, and it was a whole year spent recognizing the contributions of women to the success story of Singapore. Because it was a national effort led by its woman president, Halima Jacob, the entire community participated, and it was an imperative situation that everybody was drawn into participating in activities to be in line with the celebration of the women of Singapore. This included both men and women, as well as public and private sectors, young and old, as they identified very systematically throughout the year the challenges, the progress, and potentials that should be undertaken, and potential activities that should be undertaken to bring gender equality, among others, into the national conversation. As early as January, there was a series of seminars entitled Women in Our Time. I was very fortunate to have been invited together with President Jacob to deliver the keynote speeches. I think my presence was more to bring in a regional perspective into the discussion. The series of events during the year generated robust discussions which the political leaders today admit have benefited their efforts in policy making, noting that laws and policies have to be accompanied by shifts in mindsets. They highlighted investment in education. I thought this was a terrific focus on forever moving on the educational practices they have, policies on education. And I think we know that it was so far only Singapore that has been recognized in terms of highly innovative educational systems. Looking back today, a year after, I noted very visible and immediate impact of the year-long celebrations on the Singaporean community. For one thing, private companies on their own increased paternity leaves due to all the discussions and all the suggestions that it was necessary to engage the men and increase paternity leaves, which was immediately implemented. The second was, which I thought very interesting, was highlighting women role models in science and technology. Up to today, you see a series of articles, speeches, seminars, television, highlighting the role of young women scientists, which I thought was terrific. Now people are familiar. Who are these young women who are very much engaged in science and technology? Recently, towards the end of the year, and which is continuing now, the celebration ignited a very serious discussion on revising the Women's Charter. The Women's Charter of Singapore came very early on after their independence. And the family charter, the Women's Charter has been transformed into a family charter. And a very interesting point which I noticed was the inclusion of the possibility of divorce based on mutual consent. Earlier, I think, of course, the divorce is legal in Singapore. Earlier, they found out that divorces had very raised acrimonious relationships in the family. And so they decided that perhaps a mutual consent should be looked into as a reason for addressing divorce issues. During that year, last year, I thought that my contribution was to bring into the discussion the fact that the Philippines initiated the Convention on the Elimination of all forms of discrimination against women, which today is really the Bill of Rights for women around the world. And I shared this with the Philippine community as well, and I was surprised that most of them are not informed. There are 90,000 professionals in Singapore with 80,000 domestics, and many of them are not aware that the Philippines initiated this convention, and therefore I thought that they should have a good look at it, because most countries in the world have acceded to the convention. As I went on towards the end of last year, the second experience I would like to share today is the meeting I had. It was a terrific meeting I had with a 39-year-old woman president of Kosovo. President Vjosa Osmani, at 39 years old, was elected president of Kosovo in April 2021. And guess what? On a single platform, the fight against corruption with the rule of law as a precondition. She, by the way, while living abroad as a refugee, took her PhD in international law, went back and entered politics until she became was elected last year as the second woman president of Kosovo at 39 years old of age. She admitted to a number of seemingly unsurmountable challenges as a woman candidate in a male-dominated society. Of course, you remember the Balkan Wars was a very complicated war that lasted so long based on ethnic differences and which left a lot of men being killed and lots of women who have been refugees, but they came back to work for the country. What caught my attention was what she said in our conversation when I asked her how she was able to get to the top of the political ladder. She was easily said, and I quote, "Nothing is more liberating than a cause beyond oneself." She said that as a leader, she was guided by bigger causes, doing the right thing in the interest of the people and country. Following our conversations, I thought I gathered some impressions which I thought I could share and which likened her to some women political leaders we know. I noted a deep sense of humanity, and I think Winnie mentioned about a sense of humanity that is innate in women. When I learned that Kosovo, under her leadership, was the first country in the world to officially admit refugees from the Afghan war last year. This reminded me of the decision made by Chancellor Angela Merkel of Germany when she admitted 1 million refugees into Germany without condition, and which I think confirms again this deep sense of humanity that is innate in women. As I have learned from a fascinating book on the female brain, a woman is instinctively and by nature a nurturing human being and has the ability to empathize with those who have basic needs such as food, shelter, and clothing. Second impression I gained was her competence in leading her country, evident in the way she squarely faced the challenges to the legal existence of Kosovo as an independent country. She fought for it, and which gained her the respect and recognition of many of the European countries, as well as United Nations organizations. I believe that her training in the law profession gave her the capacity to stand her legal ground steadfastly. Third, I saw in her frank, candid, and more importantly, honest answers to sensitive and challenging questions. This way, she gained the trust of her people to lead them. Certainly, her strength of character was visible and palpable as she interacted with us at the round table of ministers, which I chaired. But what remains in my mind is what she said to me and which remained in the minds of most of us at that meeting. And I repeat what she said, that nothing is more liberating than a cause beyond oneself, doing the right thing for the interest of her people and country. Now, I would be remiss if I will not refer to our remarkable women ambassadors leading our diplomatic and consular posts. As I have mentioned to you and which I have referred to in the book which we launched at Manila House in November 2019, I think, pending validation, the Philippines leads the number of women ambassadors around the world. From 1958 to 2021, we have had 95 women ambassadors. Other countries in our region, and I will not mention them, have only as much as 47. The other one, the closest is 47, the next one is 45. And yesterday I got a figure that Cambodia, while being a young country, has had 16 women ambassadors. While in Europe, I visited 4 of our embassies. 3 of them were led by women who were doing outstanding job, which many of you can be very proud of. And I'd like to cite the leadership of our ambassador in Lisbon, who spoke perfect Portuguese and gave a wonderful year-long program to celebrate 500 years of Magellan. And women leaders like her, think of all the details. She had port wine in the name of Magellan. She's working on a street to be named after Magellan. I think for our women ambassadors, and I call them, and it's not me, by the way, it was Kofi Annan who called our women ambassador remarkable women ambassadors. No job is too big nor too small for them to undertake, just like our Filipino women. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Albert. RC, if you'd like to put everyone on screen now. I think we have Senator Risa Hontiveros has joined us already, if I'm not mistaken. Senator, can we welcome you to today's
Thank you, ma'am, but I
Thank
can't seem to open my video.
Ayun. We had the same issue earlier with
Oh dear,
everyone
I'm
else. So
sorry.
we're going to, no, that's fine. RC will, will put you all in video now.
Thank you, ma'am.
Oh, please don't call me ma'am.
Oh, sorry.
Just call me Bambina.
Thank you, Miss Bambina. Okay.
Can you try po, Senator?
All right, we'll do. Yon. Okay.
And let's put Winnie also back on screen,
Okay.
but spotlight the senator.
Ayon.
Senator, welcome to today's webinar. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for the message you sent earlier.
Very welcome.
Was there anything you wanted to add to it?
No, I'm just sorry I missed Maring Winnie's talk, but I'm glad I caught Ambassador Delia's. I apologize for how casual I look. I'm doing some groundwork here in Tarlac, and the event is still going on in the covered court. So the only place I could open the Zoom was here in the van. But I'm really glad to catch up.
Thank you for doing that. Yes. I just wanted to ask you really quickly, how is it going on the campaign trail?
There's no campaign yet.
Not yet? But you're running, right, Senator? Am I right? Or
the campaign period is on.
But isn't there a gun ban already? Sorry, I'm a little I'm a little confused about the time. I thought there was a gun ban already, so I thought that campaigning period had officially started. Has it not? Okay. But are you running again, Senator, for this cycle? Can you hear me?
Risa, you're muted.
Okay, maybe there's a little bit of a okay. Yeah. Anyway, let's have everyone maybe on gallery view now.
Because Risa is muted, that's why you cannot hear her. I don't think she.
Telling you all the technical is Mercury in retrograde or something. All the technical issues today have been a little bit overwhelming. Anyway, let's maybe just have a little discussion now. RC, do you want to put us all on gallery view? I think, and then Senator Risa can just join when she manages to get. So when you talk about gender equality, I mean, at the moment, women are still the more disadvantaged gender, right? Even if the Philippines actually ranks quite well in the within the region, ASEAN region, for the gender pay gap, I think. Am I correct in saying that?
I think you're referring to the World Economic Forum Gender Gap Index, where from 2006 to 2016, we were part of the top 10 that have narrowed the gender gap. We have narrowed. We have not made it equal. We've just narrowed. And from 2016, we went down We are now number 17, I think, or even lower. But that was how I monitor from 2006 when we started to be part of the World Economic Forum Gender Equity Index. 2006 to 2016, we were one of the top 10. Then we dropped off.
But Senator Risa, you have authored several landmark bills, right, addressing all these inequalities, like maternity leave and all that. And I think, were you also involved with the recent one about raising the age of marriage
Yes, Miss Bambina.
for women? Just and apparently there are certain sectors that are opposing that and asking for, for it to remain, for it not to be passed.
Right. Well, I'm really glad that yes, I was part of pushing that law, raising the age of consent, thereby expanding the protection to our young girls and women against statutory rape to the age of 17. I'm sad that there are some organizations now which are calling for a suspension of the implementation of the law, when even during the committee hearings, we heard them out. There were also members of their own religious community, especially women and girls, including survivors of child marriage themselves, who oh, I'm sorry, I've confused the two bills. We're talking about the bill. Thank you, Maring Winnie. We're talking about the bill.
Child marriage.
Yes, banning child marriage. I'm sorry. And we did hear out those religious communities during the committee hearing, and met them halfway by, in fact, suspending the penalties for officiating, facilitating, or contracting child marriage by a year, in order to enable specifically our Filipino, Muslim, and indigenous peoples communities to conduct education and cultural change programs during that 1 year, after which the penalties would kick in. So I really appreciate, for example, Maring Winnie and Ms. Bambina, the communication that that Amina Rasul has made, calling on some of the leaders of her religious community to recognize that it all of our spiritual communities or faith communities, all of our faith communities are called upon to protect children, and that it would be a disservice to all our children, whatever religion, whatever ethno-linguistic group, if the law were not to be implemented. As you said, Ms. Mambina, it is a landmark law because finally the Philippines has joined more and more other countries in banning child marriage. And why? In order to protect the health of our girls and young women, in order to protect their right to an education until they shall have completed the education they desire, in order to support them in preparing for the life of work, employment, or entrepreneurship that they wish for themselves. And so that in that way, they will be able to establish a family of their own if and when they decide to, and in their own good time.
But that's all very sound reasons. Of course, those are all perfectly valid reasons. The question I wanted to ask also now is, what about educational policy? I mean, that's a little bit of a controversy at the moment, right? Because apparently history's been taken out, or there's a proposal to remove history from the curriculum, which doesn't make sense to me. But if you're also arguing that young women need to be educated as well, so in order to make informed decisions, which makes sense, right? If you also impact the educational system, though, what are they learning for their own future, for their own future employability, their own future, their own personal futures as well, in terms of their own personal development and growth, right? So how would we counter that?
Well, all the historical revisionism that has been going on for the past years has really, unfortunately not been countered by a solid teaching of the true stories, for example, of the martial law dictatorship. I mean, if Germany was able to do it, and I heard Ambassador Delia speaking about former Chancellor Angela Merkel, if Germany was able to do it with their own terrible experience of the Holocaust and thereby educate all the succeeding generations of Germans about the hard-won lessons of that terrible period, why could we not? Why did we not do so about the martial law dictatorship? We need to belatedly teach all our history, more, not less history, and the true history about all historical periods of our country, including the martial law dictatorship. Now, fast forward, we did pass the K-12 law, finally coming up to par with other countries in the region and the world to provide 12 years of basic education. There were so many other education policies that needed to follow on that. And lifelong educators like Maring Winnie could speak to this even more than me. And in the middle of our still incomplete education reform process, naabutan pa tayo ng pandemyang ito with all the challenges brought on by online learning. So much so that now education reform advocates in civil society, in the private sector, and some even in government are in fact calling on the education authorities to declare an education crisis and to strategically address these many and long-standing issues that are making it more difficult even for our young women and girls that we want to protect with laws like that banning child marriage, preventing them from, as you said, Ms. Bambina, actually receiving and participating in the education that they deserve.
Yes, yes, of course. But Winnie, as Senator Risa mentioned, you're a lifelong educator as well. Have you seen any kind of reshaping of attitudes, of cultural attitudes as well?
In the first place, that K-12 has not been, uncontroverted a success, because according to the studies, our 12 years of education in the Philippines are worth about 8 years of education elsewhere. So there is something wrong about the quality of our education. And it all starts with the fact that our teachers are underqualified. It is a problem that has been with us since the early 30s, I think. I'm talking about 1930s. And I don't know what the solution is, but certainly that K-12 was not a solution, because they said, well, because everybody else has 12 years, we've got to have 12 years. But the quality of that 12 years was like 8 years anyway. So it is a waste of time, because we did not undertake to improve the quality of the education. And what do you call this? What do you call that? Curriculum. The curriculum. There were so many subjects and so little time to work on them. They decided that history would be put in language, would be put in reading, would be put this, put there. As a matter of fact, everybody thought that history could just be learned, like in the environment, the teachers telling them stories, etc. The fact is, Bambina, that no education secretary since martial law actually undertook to find out what we were teaching in history. And then it got removed from the curriculum, and now we don't know where we are. I don't know where history is in high school or elementary school or whatever. I don't know where it is, where it is being taught, but certainly there is no question that we have failed our younger generation in not telling them the true story. And with this technology, this change in technology and social media, and the algorithms that bring together all people who think the same way and just give them more and more of the same rot that they want to have. You have essentially generated a group of people who truly believe that Mr. Marcos was the best president there was, that the martial law period was the best period in history. And that's a small group. That's a relatively small group, but unless it is stopped now and a complete revision, I mean, not revision, but revision of our curriculum takes place, we won't be able to stop the rot from growing, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, yes, you're right. I have a question here from Cara Wilson that I wanted to address to you about, obviously, we all know that there's a woman running for president in this cycle and a woman also running for vice president and various senators and other elected positions. The question that we have here is, how do you suggest the country should address the misogyny that comes from the highest office in the land? Do you think this has translated into skepticism for the capacity or competence of the only woman candidate in the next election? We're talking about the presidential level, obviously. Anyone care to?
Well, let me start, that misogyny, unfortunately, the country has addressed it by laughing, at the president's comments. That is, to me, the biggest sin. The military laugh, the government officials laugh, etc. I have yet to see somebody get up and get out of that room, in protest against the misogyny. But I do not think that this has translated into skepticism of the capacity or competence of Leni Robredo. The skepticism or competence, the skepticism for her capacity or competence does not come from the president's misogyny. It comes from the general, let's put it this way, misogynistic traits of our fellow Filipinos. Our fellow Filipinos are really machos, or macho wannabes. Unfortunately, look. Can you see when were there coups against the government? The coups against the government was under the government of President Cory Aquino and under the government of President Gloria Arroyo. There were no coups against all the other presidents. And and if Leni becomes president, and I hope she becomes president, she is going to face that kind of thing again. It's a cultural thing. As far as I'm concerned, the people, they laugh at this rude, gross, talagang, horrifying comments. And I'm sorry to say, but some of those people who were listening to him were women.
Yeah, no, we know that. Yeah.
So Leni's presidency will be a transformative presidency. The cure will start from her.
How transformative would it be, considering we've had two other female presidents? What would make her different? We can say, oh, but there's no gender gap anymore in terms of gender inequality.
There's always a gender gap. There will always be a gender gap. The women in leadership, the gender parity in public service is the objective is to attain it by 2050, 50 by 50. That's 28 years from now. So that's how far we have to. I think we can do it much better. But it's not the gender gap, it's the present. Let's face it, Aquino and Arroyo were part of dynastic families. Robredo is not. In fact, her experience has been, she has been fighting against in order to get into Congress, she had to fight a very powerful dynastic family, and she did it. How did she do it? By house to house. She told me she started at 6 o'clock in the morning and ended at 12 o'clock at night, continuously during the campaign period. In other words, it can be done. And the people, you know, the dynasty that was against her followed her. In other words, wherever she went, they would follow and give gifts to the people. It did not. It was not successful. So, in other words, the Filipino people are quite ready to dismantle dynasties. So Robredo is different from her predecessors because she's not a dynasty. Number two, I'm sorry, Delia, but the president you served under was a very qualified president. I think she was one of the most qualified to be president. Unfortunately, one cannot choose one's relatives, and her relatives did her in. And Robredo does not have that problem. Robredo does not have that problem. She does not have a husband and sons who are well, what do you call it, Risa? Greedy, whatever. She will do a, I mean, if there's anybody who can transform this president, it is Lenny.
Can I come?
But yes, of course.
Yeah. You know, this has been a continuing discussion, not just with the Philippine community here, but with also the locals. And in one interesting meeting, a local person from here said, looking at your candidates, he said, and this is completely outsider, I think at this point in time in your history, you need a leader that could lead you with a moral compass.
Absolutely.
So that, you know, and then he went on to talk about the leadership in Singapore. He says, moral compass is very important. And I heard this again when the president of Kosovo talked about, he said, it was my anti-corruption was the only thing that really led me there, because people saw that my hands were clean, that I had the moral strength to lead them, because I didn't have anything that would put me down, that would make me like the other candidates. It was a very simple thing, she said. But she repeated the word moral compass, and that's what you need in your country.
Well, that's what we have in Lenny Robredo.
Risa, Senator Risa, can I ask you, have you, being in the Senate or even running for office, did you face a lot of skepticism, a lot of misogyny, a lot of, you know, maybe that was the time when you first ran, there were no trolls yet, but, you know, you must have also
They were just
had
setting
your
up
share.
business. Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
Was there
I agree.
anything that at a certain point, sorry, I wanted to ask,
It's
the
okay.
certain point that it was so discouraging that you thought maybe I shouldn't do this, or, you know, you just went on anyway?
I'm very hard-headed, so I just went on. I agree with what Maring Winnie said, that the sexism and misogyny is only most uglily lent a platform by the president, but the sexism and misogyny is in our cultures here in the Philippines. And I did come up against that also when I was working in the House as a representative of Akabayan Party, and also a few times working in the Senate. I remember debating with one colleague about a bill, the then cheaper medicines bill. I was working in the House then, and he said, oh, you know, you don't have to keep arguing about that particular point, because that point is just like a hairdryer. And he meant hair dryer as an appliance that only we women use, as if men don't also use it. And he used that image to say, that's something trivial, that's something you don't have to take so seriously and to debate with me about. No, I refuse. I just hung on to that point, and it eventually ended up, that provision, in the now cheaper medicines law. Another time, a senior colleague asked me, Risa, I was a first termer then. Risa, can you ask ETA, our senior representative, ETA Rosales, can you please ask her to draft a letter for me? And so I asked her, she sent back a draft through me. And then this colleague of ours said to me, sweetheart, this is not the kind of draft I need. So pumanting yung tenga ko, sabi ko sa kanya, I'm not your sweetheart. So then he said, oh, sorry. Darling, this is not the kind of draft I need. Yeah, ganon, Ms. Mabina. I really raised my voice and I practically shouted at him, I'm not your darling. So, you know, he sort of ran away to the other end of the session hall and things like that. And, you know, trying to push for bills now regarding SOGI equality or dissolution of marriage. I also come up against similar attitudes, if not outright behaviors. So, and I agree with Maring Winnie that VP Lenny would be the one, by her own personal example, her own style of leadership, her own brand of democratic governance, would be the one to start to push back against this ugly resurgence. The president has, you know, from day one, targeted Senator Leila. He has targeted the president. He targeted a former Chief Justice Sereno. He even targeted former Justice and Ombudsman Conchita Carpio Morales in the most ugly way by reducing us women to sex objects and objects of ridicule and of harassment and intimidation. He has subjected domestic workers to groping in the household where they serve, in full view of the media. He has subjected OFW women, Filipinas, to, you know, obliging them to kiss him on the mouth in public. And what I can see Maring Winnie, and really it makes us cringe. You know, he makes jokes of rape. He makes jokes of the worst crimes against women. So sexism and misogyny has been called out of us like the worst in us, the dark in us, by this kind of leadership of the president. And I certainly agree with Maring Winnie and with Ambassador Delia, with VP Lenny's ethical compass, that this will be one of the many areas of ruinous damage that she will lead to begin to repair.
You know, people think that in order to be, you know, to be strong, you should be gross and you should be rude, you should be, you know, etc. That strength has nothing to do with those characteristics. Unfortunately, some people here in the Philippines, you know, marry the two. If you make mura, you make crude jokes, etc. You must be a strong man. That is so wrong, and we should do everything we can to say that just because you are gentle does not mean that you are not strong, because that's been the characteristic of so many women. They are gentle and yet they are so strong. They, you know, you're not going to be able to put them down.
But I think a lot of people, they make the mistake of correlating like that, the crudeness with authenticity.
Yes.
Right? And that's complete. That they don't. It's not a logical conclusion that just because you swear and, you know, ridicule other people or whatever, just because you give in to your baser impulses, that you're a more real person, right?
But unfortunately, President Duterte's characteristics have encouraged that kind of of thinking and that kind of attitude. And that, to me, is one of the worst things that he has done to the Philippines.
Yeah.
Do you
And
remember?
I think also,
Do you remember? It was President Gloria's time. Si Mar Rojas, you know, he let out an expletive during a I don't know, demonstration, etc. And the whole press and the whole society just jumped on him. It was one expletive. He said, "Putangina." He did not even say "Putangina mo," President President Gloria. He just said "Putangina." It was a frustration. It was a frustration. And he almost got got run out of the city by the guy. But and that was only 8 years before President Duterte came in and started his administration with such a a host of expletives, and nobody said
and he was given a pass. It's almost like Trump in a way, right? Yeah. But Ambassador Albert, I wanted to ask you, your career was been in diplomacy. So we assume a certain level of maybe more finesse in the manner of speech and everything. But have you also encountered maybe microaggressions in that sense? Of a sexist or misogynist nature. And by the way, sexism and misogyny is not only men, right? It's not only men who express it. We women can internalize it as well, and so we can also be just as guilty of sexism and misogyny by the fact that laughing along with jokes like that is women laughing along with the jokes that crude jokes that, for example, the president has made is also a form of misogyny and sexism. Sorry, Ambassador, back to you.
Well, I'll take you back to 40 years ago when I decided to get married. And I was told that I would have to write a letter as a diplomat, as a woman diplomat, write a letter of application for permission to marry, and attached to it is a letter of resignation. In practice, all the women who did such a letter were considered resigned.
Imagine.
And the men were allowed to marry anyone they pleased. This really got Letty into that convention. Well, it's a long story, but anyway, Letty was with me all the time, Shahani. And she said, "What? I didn't know that," but she had been a widow before she entered the service, so there was no problem. I had decided to marry a German who was a chief editor of German television. And I thought, yeah, well, he can help me in my career, etc. Then I was informed, you will be considered resigned the moment you marry him.
Wrong.
All the women before my time had to resign if they wanted to marry somebody outside of who is not a Filipino national. So what I did was to prepare a legal brief. I discovered that 21 men in the Philippine Foreign Service were married to 21 foreign women. They were all allowed to marry them and stay in the service. But none of the women who applied was allowed to do so. So I said, what do I do? I said, well, I will look at what we have agreed to do, etc. Anyway, 1974, Letty and I started to work on the Convention on the Elimination of all forms of discrimination against women. And one of the stipulations was any woman must be allowed to marry anyone she wanted to, whatever. It's part of the 33 articles. Anyway, that took a long time. It took me 3 years to get the Department of Foreign Affairs agree that I could marry the man I wanted to marry and stay in the service.
Yes.
It was the first time. It was a long, tedious process. Then I realized there was misogyny in the department. Would you believe that in the beginning, I could not take it?
Mm.
That But here was a proof that 21 men were married to foreign women and they all stayed in the service. All the women who had applied to do so were considered resigned.
So it takes somebody to stand up and say you're wrong, you can't do
That's
it.
it.
That's
Get
it.
your- believe in what you think you should believe in, what is right. And today there are 38 women diplomats married to 38 foreign men. So it was only possible because I challenged, and I was prepared to take the consequences, but I believe that it was wrong. It was wrong to have such a discriminatory practice.
Of course.
Absolutely. Well done. Thank you for doing that.
Well, 3 years to do that. And
Years.
and I was asked what if they still made you resign? I said, I don't think they would have, because I think we were able to convince that it was not right to do so. But you have to be ready to stand for it. You have
Exactly.
to be ready for
And,
the consequences, and you must prepare. And I prepared the legal brief of my life, and I succeeded.
Well done. Well, that's why we need more women, right, in positions of leadership to fight for these things.
I wonder if the people in the webinar know that Delia Albert, aside from being all this, she's about 4'11" or 4. She's a tiny woman. Can you imagine this woman standing up to there? I can see it and enjoy it very, very much.
But
Gives me hope.
But Minnie, who inspired me to do all of this was a woman who was even tinier than me, Madame Lux Vijaya Pandit, who was the sister of Nehru, and she was so much smaller, and she led the first woman president of the UN General Assembly, and if you look at the things that she succeeded in turning around a lot of practices around the world, you'll be amazed. And I think I say this, and I try to convince our women diplomats to educate themselves how they could meet challenges the same way that I met my challenges. And I think if you look at the record we have, imagine that we have 91 women who made it to the top of the ladder. It is a record, and I'm valid in Asia. Of course, it's a record, but I don't know around the world. But from what I see, I still think, and a lot of these women went through a lot like myself. Separation from family, separation from husbands who did not want to join them, but they went through and succeeded to serve the country.
I think that's a good way to segue to this one question from Ramako. Do you feel that increasing the number of women in power is sufficiently progressive? Or must there be a push to empower female leaders who advocate specifically for progressive agenda?
In other words, you're saying, can we, any woman, do we support any woman? No, we should not support any woman. It's like men and women. You select the proper women, the ones who are properly qualified. And if they are not qualified, you don't support them. But the fact is that we need more women at the top. Research has shown that when there are more women at the top, the country actually grows faster.
Yeah.
And there is more human development because women are, they empathize, they think about family, they think about children, they think about society, etc. That's why the women-led countries in this pandemic were so successful, because they thought about the lives first.
Yeah. In fact, we had a webinar about that last year with Ambassador Albert as well, and with Asian Society, about why female leadership seems to have been much more effective in addressing the pandemic than male, male presidents and prime ministers. But I also think that, in relation to that question, I think Senator Risa can expound on this, that women also tend to concentrate on more progressive issues, such as things like healthcare and all that are not that should actually be regular issues. They shouldn't even be progressive issues, or
Here.
LGBT rights, right? And
Yes,
hopefully
yes,
divorce and all that, right? So
yes,
having women, I think, would put the focus on these issues,
yes.
right,
And
Senator?
yes, Ms. Bambina. And I think this question is like what Maring Winnie was talking about earlier on the education issue, that we're talking here not only of quantity, but of quality. So of course, that's why it's so important for us to push for policies that further empower us women through our home and family lives, through our education, through our work, through our engagement in various social spheres, including the political. I'm also not a biological determinist. I don't presume that all of us women are necessarily more progressive than all the
Yes.
men and of diverse soji. But, and because I believe that in every human being, whether born male or female, we have those capacities equally. Nga lang, the way we are brought up as children, the way we are socialized in school, at work, tends to channel us into, for example, to channel us women into those stereotypical women, quote unquote, women fields, and the men to stereotypical male fields. That has in a way predisposed us, even as we're fighting for wider and deeper liberation of women, that has indeed predisposed us in crises like the current pandemic and recession to, as Maring Winnie also said, doing much, much better. Countries doing much better under women-led political leadership in terms of the pandemic response, in terms of the recession response, to bring their peoples, their nations closer to really a new and better health and economic normal. And by the way, doing it in more democratic fashion, not through strongman authoritarianism and populism, which by the way, has also spectacularly failed, for example, under um, our own president. So I think it's really important, yes, to have more women in all levels of position, power, responsibility, and accountability, simply because, hey, kalahati tayo ng human race, kalahati tayo ng bawat national population, then we bring because of our particular experiences at this historical period, we bring to our different work particular perspectives, capacities, temperaments to the job. Na muli, hindi ko sinasabing tayo lang mga kababaihan ang kayang gumawa nun. I challenge our brothers, the men, again of different soji, to also step up in the way we women step up. But for each of us to support each other. Kasi hindi talaga lalaya ang lahat ng tao unless women as well are free and free to achieve all our potentials and free to contribute the very rich contributions we have always made and we can further make to our countries and to the world.
I think your point on women supporting other women is one of the important messages that we can share, because numbers also matter. Why are we able to I think be more assertive, not necessarily aggressive, but more assertive in among ourselves, among the women diplomats that I know, because I keep in touch with them. I try to, and this is why we wrote that book on the remarkable women ambassadors of the remarkable Philippine women ambassadors. And I think the story has to go out, that you can be what you want to be and you have the support of other women. I think this is very important if we want to move move forward. And one of my favorite quotes when I speak to our women diplomats is an interesting sentence from a book called The Female Brain. And I strongly recommend people to read it. It's a study of a woman medical doctor for 20 years from Harvard University. And one of her conclusions was that, quote, "The female brain has tremendous unique aptitudes, outstanding verbal agility, ability to connect deeply in friendships, and nearly psychic capacity to read faces and tone of voice for emotions and states of mind, and a great ability to diffuse conflict." I chose this because I think it is so relevant to my messages to our women diplomats. And by the way, more and more women are passing the foreign service exams, and some people feel a little bit threatened.
But it's another way of saying EQ, right? That EQ component that women seem to possess more than men, I suppose, just as important as in getting things done and leading governments or doing business and all that. Winnie, do you want to a few last words, and then I'll turn us all over to Joy Alampay, Executive Director of Asian Society, to round up the discussion.
I mean, let's make sure that we are using this webinar or this conversation. Let's not think of it as some intellectual exercise. This is very, very
real.
What we are facing, our elections, etc. I like what Maria Ressa said, that this is a do or die set a year for us, because we have to move, we have to completely get out of the kind of system we are in now, with the tendencies toward authoritarianism, the tendency to try to use law, to use the law to abuse your power and use the law for your own benefit. We've got to elect the best person for the job, and please God, we are going to elect a woman.
Okay. On that note, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today, and really for pushing forward this whole well, we're all women here, at least all women on the panel, and I think we're great examples, if I may say so ourselves, of what women can achieve, really, and in society, and also a reminder of the things that we're still fighting for all women, and for the country and the world at large. So again, this webinar is going to be up on YouTube by tomorrow, probably, or the day after, if you'd like to refer back to it on the Manila House channel. And again, thank you for joining us. And I would like to turn you over to Joy Alampay, our partner from Asian Society, who will, again, a woman leading a very important organization that is international in scope, and also pushing for very progressive agendas through understanding, bridging cultures, and understanding, understanding each other through arts, sciences, politics, everything. Just having a conversation, really, throughout the world. And women are a very important part of this. So Joy, take it away.
Yes, thank you so much, Bambina. Before I do my closing, I just like to reiterate the book of our esteemed ambassador, Women in Diplomacy. This is the one, and you should grab this. It will give you insights, because I agree with our Professor Monsod that we need all the insights to really push for that woman for these elections. Bambina or myself, you email us for a copy.
Yes. Yeah. Just events@manilahousinc.com. Yeah, I just see a question here. Please email us, get in touch with us at Manila House, and we'll arrange for your copy to be delivered. So thank you to our wonderful speakers today. Thank you, Senator Risa, for making it. I know you're all the way there in Tarlac. Thank you,
Thank
Ambassador Albert
you.
from Singapore, and thank you, Professor Monsod from quarantine
Oh,
for
stay
joining us
healthy,
today.
Maring Winnie.
Joy, of course, for partnering with us. Yeah,
And
stay
I
healthy,
forgot to
everyone.
say, we got
Thank you.
to vote for Risa in Hontiveros, and we've got
Thank
to vote for
you.
Laila de Lima.
Yes,
Also,
please.
yes.
Got to vote for these people. They have been the best of womanhood.
Salamat.
That's a great way of putting it. Yes, I mean,
Yes.
let women lead, in short, right? I mean, why not?
Thank you
Okay,
again,
on that
Bambina,
note,
for having
thanks
Asian
everyone.
Society.
Yes, a great pleasure as always. And see you, we have a talk on January 20 about bank security. I think also very, very interesting in light of recent recent events with Wick Veloso of PNB, who's also president of Bankers Association of the Philippines, Nikki Mapa of ING Philippines, which is an online bank, and moderated by Robbie Alampay, happens to be Joy's husband. So we'll see you then, January 20. And so from Manila House, goodbye and thank you so much.
Salamat
And
po.
more power to you, Senator Risa.
Thank
Delia,
you. Power to the people.
Risa,
Power to women.
Bambina,
Power to the
bye.
people.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye. Thank you.